Hello, everyone, and welcome to our interview with Sam Markle, the story behind the Sam the Record Man sign. First, I would like to introduce our guest, Sam Markle, Honorary Chair of Sign Expo Canada. Born in Winnipeg, Sam transformed his one-man sign painting operation into a full-service, high-profile international architectural sign company. The Brothers Markle Inc., co-owned with his brother Jack, pioneered the renaissance of neon and the landscape of downtown Toronto, and its environ changed forever. They produced many landmark signs, including the iconic Sam the Record Man spinning neon record, which has been declared a heritage site, not the building, but the sign. Sam will be interviewed by Erin Roberts, Chief Staff Officer of the Sign Association. Without further delay, let's begin. Erin?
Thanks so much, Anne. Well, welcome, Sam, to the webinar studio. And we're going to talk about the Sam the Record Man sign, but I'd like to start off with how did you get into the sign industry? And when we were chatting earlier, you had mentioned that the way you ended up in the sign industry was quite different from the way other people ended up in the sign industry at the time.
Yes. Well, Anne, when I was graduating high school in Winnipeg, my mother said, she's a single parent, and those were hard times, and so university was not really an option financially. She said, "What do you want to do, son?" And I said, "I want to be an artist." She said, "An artist? Well, you'll starve. Why don't you become a bookkeeper like other Jewish boys?" But then I worked part-time in a men's club. I was a steward in a men's club. And by fortune, the owners of the Universal Signs company in Winnipeg was a bulletin outdoor advertising company. And I asked them if I could come to work for them after I graduated. And they hired me for 40 cents an hour. Oh, I forgot a part. I saw a sign painter painting a giant orange crush bottle on a brick wall.
Oh, wow.
On Salter Avenue in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, I can do that. Then I'll be an artist, and I'll still get paid.
Perfect.
So they hired me at Universal Signs, and I spent the first few weeks scrubbing off old paint off of the metal panels. We soaked them in a live bath and then hosed them down. And I thought, I'm going to spend the rest of my life like scraping off old panels. And I said to the owners, when can I paint a sign? And they said, when you're ready. And I said, well, how will you know when I'm ready? He said, well, here's the keys to the shop. Come in on the weekend and paint a small version of a bulletin board. And so I did, and on Monday I was promoted to sign painter.
Fantastic.
Yes, and this was, of course, before digital printing. So I would paint a face on a billboard, and the eye was about 2 feet long, and I'd have a big fat brush, and and on a scaffold, so I couldn't step back to look at it till the end of the day when the scaffold went down, and that's how I apprenticed as a sign painter. Then 3 years later, I wanted to go to Paris to become a real artist. And so I came with a buddy to Toronto as the first leg of our journey. Meantime, we really had no plan of how we would get the rest of the way. So I applied to the art college OCAD, which is now OCAD, and I had a small portfolio, which they thought was excellent. But in those days, you needed to have your academic records to get in. And before fax and email, and I had to write to Winnipeg and get an extract, etc. Well, by the time it came, it was too late for the semester, and I got a job as a sign painter in Toronto. And I worked for several sign companies for a few years, and then I started on my own with just $20 worth of brushes and paints.
Wow.
And used $3 of it for business cards. And in those days, you had to, if you had a truck or a van, the law was you had to have your name on it.
Oh.
So I drove to stoplights And if I was beside a truck, I would hand them a card through the window, say, when you're ready to get your name on the truck, call me.
Good for you.
Yes, and I made $27 the first day, which was equivalent to what a married man would earn in those days.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. So fast forward now, you're a young man, you've just started out your new company, you're handing out business cards through the side of the truck.
Yeah.
But now you're an established company and you have this opportunity to do the Sam the Record Man sign. So how did you end up getting the business?
Okay, well, my brother and I ran the sign company for a number of years, but we were still sign painters. And we perceived that to be like buggy whip makers in the day of the automobile. And we yearned to get into electric signs. And to our good luck, we bought somebody else's bad luck. The owner of Apex Neon, a small neon company, was killed in a plane crash. And we waited a respectable time and contacted his wife to see if she wanted to sell the company, which she did. So now we had joined the electric sign industry. And one of their clients was Sam the Record Man. And in no time, Sam Snyderman called me and said, you're the new owner, come in and talk to me about a project. And now they had the building at 347 Yonge Street, and it was plastered with signs all over. But there was a space of about 4 feet square in the middle with no sign. And he said, could you design and quote on something to put in that space? I went back to the workshop, and I had a brilliant designer on staff who designed the 25-foot square spinning record, taking down all the little signs. When I showed that to Sam, he said, Markle, are you out of your effing mind? He said, I wanted a little sign. Now the cost of the new sign would be $16,500 in those days. Now it would be about $200,000 in equivalent dollars. He picked up the phone and he called Capitol Records and he said, if I put your name on a new sign, would you contribute $5,000? They said yes. Then he phoned RCA. He phoned 4 record companies. They each agreed to pay $5,000.
Smart.
And he said, okay, Markle, do it. I said, now we had no idea how we were going to make it spin. So we made a small maquette or model, and we experimented with these. There were 12 segments of neon, and we had mechanical flashers in those days, and we experimented with this spinning. And years later, we upgraded it to electronic flashers, which we developed for our own use, flashers and animators. And some years later, 16 years later, Sam asked me to make another. They took over a store next to the original store, and he said, we want another record on there. And I said, well, that's crazy, Sam. We can design something different for there. No, I want another record. So he wound up with another record. And this time we didn't meet the price, but we know who was first.
And I remember you saying, and I thought it was a great comment, you said, we've already got the Mona Lisa. Why would you want 2 Mona Lisas?
Exactly.
So then what ended up happening, as you have told us and Ann had mentioned in your bio, the sign got designated heritage, which meant that when Ryerson took over that building space, they had to do something with it.
Yes.
And they had to figure out some way of displaying it.
Yep.
And what do you think about that?
Well, the legal commitment, as I understood it, they had to refurbish the original sign and put it back at 347 Yonge Street. But they hired a European architect who designed a glass building.
Right, okay.
Without any consideration of where the sign could go.
Oh.
Now, it could, in my view, it could have still been worked out. It only made sense, in my view, that the sign go back to where it was. But instead, after years of Ryerson trying to get out of the And they even suggested instead of refurbishing the sign, they would put a little brass plaque on the sidewalk.
Ooh.
And we're going, hello, and
Wow.
about snow, and we're going to walk on it.
Yeah.
And Rob Ford, the mayor at the time, called a meeting of interested parties, of which my brother and I were included. And, well, anyway, that's a whole other story. That's how we failed to convince everyone that the sign should be on Yonge Street. And ultimately, it was put up at Dundas Square, where it's way too high. It competes with all the latest technology, and it isn't as unique as it would have been on Yonge Street.
Yeah, it really looks different from that height. I mean, it doesn't have the impact that it had at the lower height.
Not at all. It should be at, street level. Well, I didn't need to tell you another little anecdote about getting a permit in those days was a little easier than now. You could just submit a sketch on a napkin and almost, but it had to be safe and zoning had to work. Well, the building was old and it couldn't support the structure. So we had to reinforce the building from the inside.
Oh my God.
We had steel plates on the inside of the brick, and we used through bolts to fasten the sign. So the sign was actually supporting the building.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, did that cost extra? Did Sam Snyderman have to come up with more money for that?
Well, he should have, but
You just did that as part of the job.
yes.
Now, are there any other signs? Can you think of another sign that you did at the Markle Brothers that you're particularly proud of?
Yes. Well, we did the facade at the Brown Derby about the same time.
And where was that? Tell us
It
about
was
that.
at the corner of Dundas and Yonge,
Mm-hmm.
is where the Dundas Square is now. And it consisted of 5 12-foot by 12-foot backlit boxes with a famous person in a derby on it, like Charlie Chaplin, the Oliver and Hardy, right? And that was iconic too. We also did the Imperial 6, which is now the Pantages. We also did the Pantages. We did the Elgin Winter Garden, Cineplex. We did the first Cineplex and maybe a dozen around the province. And we even did one in Burnaby, BC, and another one in Beverly Hills.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've been involved in the sign industry for a long time, and even during the early years, things changed quite dramatically in the sign industry. And I remember you saying that you saw a machine.
Yeah.
And when you saw that machine, you said, this will change the future of the sign industry. What was that, and why did you say that?
It was an ISA exhibit in Chicago.
Okay, the ISA Sign Expo, yeah.
And we were exhibiting, my brother and I were exhibiting, because we had developed computerized directories. Well, our problem was that we failed to focus. We'd invent something and we go, oh, there's a pretty face. I'll go and switch to that. In fact, I've been recently diagnosed as having ADD.
Finally.
Finally, yeah. Well, we didn't have initials like that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I just lacked focus. But anyway, we were at that show exhibiting, and we saw Gerber introduce the Gerber 4, a small vinyl cutting machine. And I said to all my colleagues, from this day forward, the sign industry will never be the same. Now, it had some drawbacks. The kerning was not correct, so we had to adjust it. And you had to buy vinyl with that was not pierced, but like film.
Mm-hmm.
And you could only buy it from them. So they didn't make money on the machine, but they made.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, you can't imagine a sign being made without plotters and vinyl cutting.
Well, when you look at what's going on in the sign industry now and what's happened over the course of the last few years, there is a huge convergence between different industries, all kind of getting into the sign industry's place and vice versa, whether it's print, whether it's signage, whether it's marketing.
Yeah.
What really is a sign now is a question that most of us could ask.
Yeah.
And if you were to guess where the sign industry is going to be in another 30 years, what kind of advice would you give to young people who are in the sign industry now?
I see a trend towards digital displays, and I think even ordinary signs will have that ability to change messages. And well, and also wayfinding, which my brother and I pioneered, working with architects, and now there's a profession called wayfinding designers. Well, we did that, when we saw what they did, we said, hey, we did wayfinding like 30 years ago. We just called it sign painting.
Right.
Right. And because architecture is now more and more inhuman, you have to have wayfinding programs. Whereas in earlier times, you went to a market and there was the fruit, and then there was the meat and the fish and the bakery, and then there were clothing. You didn't need signs. You just moved through the malls of those days.
Yeah.
Now you can't go to any large building. You get lost in the first few minutes. That's why my brother and I developed computerized directories. In fact, we patented them.
Oh wow, that's exciting.
So sold them around the world, really. Not enough. We also we patented narrow line framing extrusion. So to get rid of the bulky frames that backlit signs have. But now both of these patents are expired, and everybody does computerized directories, and everybody does frameless signs.
It's always a challenge when you're at the innovator end of the spectrum.
Yes. Well, I guess we weren't. We wanted to make a living, and we did, but we got our compensation in a different coin, in a way, because we're artists and innovators, and it's often not number one that makes the money. It's the number 2 and 3 who come along after. We pioneered the field, which was uphill.
For sure.
Yeah.
So if you were looking to hire somebody now, if you're talking to a sign company owner,
Yes.
and as we know, there is no post-secondary program just yet
Yes.
for the sign industry. We've been working on it as an association for a number of years now. We know it's going to happen,
Yes.
but we're not there yet. So for the most part, you're taking people from other professions,
Yep.
or you're bringing them out of high school. What kind of attributes would you be looking for in a young entry-level person if you wanted to hire them for a sign company?
Yeah. Well, there's two things. When I hired designers, which I did many of them, I always said, "Can you design with a pencil?" And they said, "No. What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if I pulled the plug on your computer, can you design?" He said, "No, I need my computer." Well, I would never hire such a designer. They had to understand design and be able to design with a pencil. To me, a computer is just another pencil. It's just an electronic pencil. That's number one. Number two, entry into the sign business is not that great financially. And there isn't one discipline. There are so many attributes one needs. Now, what my brother and I were short on, we were very strong on innovative and creative, maybe a little short on financial management, marketing, although we learned how to do that and did it well. I don't know. And we also, the SAC, when I was the president, we started a federal apprenticeship program.
Mm-hmm.
And we hired, my brother and I hired the first apprentice in Canada, and we trained him. There was no curriculum. We just trained him in the shop, in the workplace. And eventually he started his own sign company.
Well, so that's really a legacy in terms of bringing people into the industry.
Yes. It's a difficult question to answer, Erin, because there are so many things that would be useful to a sign company owner, but like business management and a degree would certainly be useful, but so would marketing, so would sales, so would finance. Building a sign is not rocket science. We always put the emphasis on the design and the quality because that's what you see in a sign.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about the sheet metal behind it, although you need sheet metal workers, you need electricians, you need all of these other disciplines. But we focused on what it looked like.
So it sounds like what you're saying is, no matter what your discipline, there's probably an opportunity for you in the sign industry because you'll be able to find your place there.
Yes.
Design, fabrication, the back office part of it as well too.
Exactly.
Now, before we go into talking about Sign Expo Canada, because of course we want to do that because you're the honorary chair this year, I did want to make sure that our listeners know that Sam was on the original board of the Sign Association of Canada, and we dug out the letters patent. And in 1962, Sam, you and others are mentioned as being on the original board. Why did you guys decide to form the organization? What did you think was going to be the outcome?
Well, that's a good question, Erin. I was there right at the beginning, and the industry was different in those days in that competitors didn't talk to each other. And in fact, I remember one of our early meetings was held at Wagner Signs, who was a large sign company at the time. And at the end of the meeting, I said, "So, George, are we now going to get a tour of your plant?" He said, "Heavens, no." I said, "Well, I couldn't understand that." And when you visited a competitor in those days, he covered everything on his desk so that you wouldn't see any sketches or quotes. And I said, "Guys, like we're out there fighting the world. We have to collaborate. Like we have common interests, we have common problems. Doesn't matter what size you are, we all have the same issues to deal with." And what's very different now, we can call any competitor for advice or help. We sold to our competitors. We became social friends with some of them. So I think that's the biggest change. Besides the technological, so the human factor.
Yeah, all being part of the same group, the same voice,
Yes.
having the same interests in mind.
Exactly.
Well, sorry.
That's it.
Well, let's talk about Sign Expo Canada. As those of you who are listening probably already know, Sign Expo Canada is a trade show, of course. It's Canada's national trade show for the industry. But there are also events within events. And this year we have probably one of our largest lineups so far. In terms of social events, of course, we have the Best of Canada Sign Industry Competition. And Sam is going to be a speaker at that Friday night event. So we do hope that all of our listeners are going to be there. Sam's going to be a feature at that event. We also have the post-move-in party. So for those who are setting up on Thursday, once you've had a chance to set up your booth, you can head over to the Milestones Grill and have a beverage and relax after moving in. On the Thursday as well, too, we also have the golf tournament, which we always have, the Don Morgan Memorial Golf Tournament. So Thursday is going to be a busy day. Then we have the Friday night event. And at the show itself, you're going to have the opportunity to do a number of things. Of course, we've got the Neon Museum Toronto pop-up gallery. And I know that Sam is on the founding board of directors for that pop-up sign museum, and that is something that we want to actually eventually get space for so that they can actually have a permanent exhibit for the Neon Sign Museum. We're also going to have, for the first time, Breaking Barriers, Women in the Sign Industry. This is an opportunity this is not exclusive to women at all, it's men and women. We're going to have a panel of distinguished female professionals in the sign industry talking about breaking barriers in the industry. We are going to have several heats throughout the day on Friday of the Sign Expo Canada Sign Build Competition. This is absolutely brand new, never been done before, and we are going to have competitors on the show floor competing in time and also in quality. So our distinguished judges will be deciding who is the winner. The winner is eligible for a big prize, and anybody who competes at a minimum is going to walk away with an awesome Sign Build Competition t-shirt. Then we've also got some learning that's going to happen here. We've got Dave Fellman giving 2 sales seminars, so please remember to sign up for those. And then we've got 3M is going to be giving a workshop by Jeff Lisbalis, and that's on doors, floors, and windows, and that's going to be running several times throughout the day on Friday and Saturday. So that's a whole lot of stuff, Sam. I gave you the golf tournament, the post-move-in party, the awards ceremony, all the learning we've got on the show floor, the Women in Sign Industry the Neon Museum pop-up and the sign build competition. If you could only attend one of those, what would it be?
That's a tough one. Well, I'm very interested in the sign design contest. Having come up through the design end of the industry. I think the sales seminar is going to be of value to everyone that attends. Of course, I'll go to the pop-up because I'm a founding director. I would go to the golf, except whenever I feel like exercising, I lie down to it. And I remember Don Morgan fondly. Don was, as you know, killed in a small plane crash years ago. But I remember him fondly from the old days.
Well, there's just so much. How can we attend it all?
Yes, well, we can attend it all. It's on for 3 days, I believe.
Yeah, well, move-in starts on Thursday, and then we got Friday and Saturday as well, too. So it's 3 days, including move-in. So we're all really excited about it. It's coming up very, very quickly now. And I want to thank you, Sam, so much for joining us, for being honorary chair. We're really looking forward to seeing you at the show. And now what I'd like to do is open it up. Does anybody have any questions for us to answer while we're here?
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Sam. If you have a question for Erin or Sam, you can ask it through the question section on the GoToWebinar dashboard. That's the gray box located on your screen. You can also ask your question verbally live on the air. If you decide to do that, click on the hand icon that is also located on the dashboard. I will then unmute your line, and then you can ask a question. If you do decide to ask your question verbally, please be mindful of background noise when we unmute your line. First question, how do I sign up for these events?
Thank you so much for asking, and a very important question. If you just go to our website, sac-ace.ca, go to the Sign Expo tab, and in there you will see a registration link. You can go with one registration link and sign up for everything that you want. So just go in, register for the show, and then sign up for any of the other events that you want to attend.
Great, thank you, Erin. Next question is, what is the cost of seeing the Neon Museum Toronto pop-up?
I'm glad you asked that question. Once you're in the show, the Neon Museum is all part of the show. You don't have to pay anything extra to get in. There is a gate fee, but if you know your suppliers well, most of them have codes that'll help you to get into the show for free. And if you don't have anybody else who can give you a code, just give us a call here at the Sign Association of Canada and we can give you one. So it's all included.
Thank you, Erin. And this is our last question for today. What's the date and time for the Breaking Barriers event?
Thank you very much. Well, that's only on, this is a one-shot deal. It's only going to be on Friday. It's 1:30 to 3 p.m. It does cost $25, and there will be coffee, tea, and some light snacks observed.
Great. Actually, another question just popped in. Sam, you've become such an innovator over your career. If you could give one piece of advice to a sign shop looking to innovate in the industry, would it be in digital?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the future.
Any other questions, Anne?
No, that was our last question.
Well, thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much, Sam. We're all looking forward to seeing our listeners and you, Sam and Anne, at Sign Expo Canada on September 20th and 21st in the International Centre, Hall 1.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.